All right, Jill, can you start us with a roll call, please?
Marshall? Here. Joe?
Yep.
Sina? Here. Jane?
All right, and so the first item is the notice of the executive session that we held after our regular meeting on December 10th. That was to discuss personnel. Next item on the agenda is the resolution regarding the meeting dates for next year. So John, you sent out a revised version of that.
Yeah, I didn't have the right January dates for when the annual meeting was to be, as when it was to be advertised before, so I just corrected that. So I'll have to get signed after it's approved, because I've got the one correct dates here.
So it should be in there somewhere. Basically, this is the time to either say that we're gonna meet as we've been meeting each second Wednesday of the month. Yeah, it would look like this. This is-
Yeah, it's not just a contract, you have everything in the budget.
So this is what it looks like. But essentially, it's just, we have to meet according to our the bylaws. Do they?
We're being shared with. Oh, yeah, thanks.
I have it on my phone.
So we have to meet monthly. Currently, we're set up to meet the second Wednesday of the month at 2:00 each month. So that's this current resolution has those dates for 2026. And if we all agree to those dates, we can just simply approve it. Or if anybody would like to propose a different meeting time or day. I don't know if people have thoughts on this as
So
far
we
as
are sticking to second Wednesday.
according to this resolution. We can change it if we want.
And at the time, I don't know, kind of like John's input, because also community staff after attending, I would like the time to be competitive. A time where more people may be able to come, it's like 2:00.
What time would you propose?
4, 5 of these days.
I'll be able to come on 4 to 12.
Okay. I guess I was thinking of you originally, but I guess
Yeah,
now-
my schedule changed.
So now it works better to meet at 2? Is
Yeah,
that-
yeah, but if,
It's fine with me, I will do whatever. I was thinking more of residents being able to come who couldn't come before, that was my concern. It
right
wasn't-
now, I have like Sundays and Fridays off. And I don't know if it's gonna change after Christmas. But right now, he's got me on every day of the week except for those 2 days.
So as of now, does this time work for you, this Wednesday at 2?
Yeah, for right now.
If we moved it later, right, staff wouldn't necessarily be able to come.
Yeah.
So, and this resolution does not have times, it just has dates. Right now, we're set up for the second Wednesday. So that's all, assuming we're all okay with 2, that'll be implied in the resolution, but the resolution itself is explicit about the dates. So, is everybody okay with meeting the second Wednesday of each month? For this couple
Yeah.
calendar year? Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I motion to approve the
Is
resolution.
there a second?
Second,
All right, can you give me a roll call vote, please, Jill?
Marshall? Joe?
Yes.
Sina? Yes. Jay?
So the next roll is we have to approve the payroll time card register. Is there a motion to approve the payroll time card register?
I motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, Jill?
Marshall?
Yes.
Joe?
Yep.
Sina?
Yep.
Jay?
All right, so the public housing operating budget. The main reason for meeting today. So, we've got a lot to cover, to say the least. The way I was thinking about this meeting is that this is the first time the budget has been in front of us. And I personally, I'm not expecting us to give it a final approval today. And the reason being, I think it's partly about going through the numbers and having John here to ask him any questions we have. But I think the budget is ultimately about the board setting goals for the coming year. And so part of this discussion is also about us figuring out what our goals are for the fiscal year 2026, 2027. And then if we need to make adjustments or find some kind of answers to, dilemmas in the budget, we can put those in conversation with whatever our goals are. So that's, again, I'm just trying to say we've got time. This is a special working session for us to discuss as a board the specifics, the details of the budget, but also the big picture and what our goals are. Just as an example of the goals, for instance, one could be we've got the budget that's in front of us right now has a deficit of, I can't remember the exact figure,
About 150.
150. So one of our goals could be to come up with a budget that gets rid of that deficit. Another goal could be the pest infestation problem and allocating resources to deal with that. That could include something like hiring a resident services coordinator to help with that issue. So I'm putting that out there at the beginning so that you all can kind of keep that in mind, like what would be your goals for this year. And maybe we can circle back to that periodically as we go through the budget.
You want me to give you like an overview where some of the numbers came from, or thinking of them already?
Yeah, so I think, I think if we can go big picture first on this budget and currently what it looks like. And then if you want to get into the details as you see fit,
Okay.
and then we'll ask questions.
The biggest number on most budgets for housing authorities is going to be your payroll benefits, which is why that's the first thing that the first roll spreadsheet that's done. And what I did is you go through and you list out all the positions. Maintenance it's set by union contract. It's a 3-year contract. We're in year 2 right now, so what's going to happen in 3 is set in stone. But Chris had asked last meeting if I could give him some ideas of how the raises went in prior years. He knew that then the attempt was being made to make administrative and maintenance basically parallel one another, to run some of it. But when I went back and looked at it, it doesn't quite work that way. Maintenance is broken into M1, M2, and M3 categories. And over the course of the 3-year contract, in each year, M1's get approximately 6% raise, M2's get approximately 7% raise, and M3's get approximately an 8% raise. The administrative staff as a whole, in the last year or two, got 4% raises. So those were the figures that I used in figuring this budget. The consumer price index for the most recent number in September was 3%. So having it in the 4% range isn't necessarily out of the ballpark. So that's where those numbers came from. Give me a second. So we did 4%. Oh, I know what you're saying. The administrative salaries, the maintenance ones are set by contract. The administrative salaries, all except for the ED, are proposed by the ED to the board. The board usually comes back and determines the ED salary. I just used, it was 4% across the board last year, so that's what I used for my calculations.
So, in terms of big picture, the big picture question is where does the money go? Where does it come from? So in terms of where it goes, the biggest place where it goes.
The biggest thing initially is going to be your payroll benefits. That's one of the biggest numbers. Where it comes from, you've got 2 things. You've got your subsidy coming from HUD, and that's based on a calculation that's done through HUD. They have you track your utility usage, gas, water, electric. Both in terms of units and in terms of dollars, and it goes into a calculation, it goes into a spreadsheet that the HUD uses. They use that data, they use your occupancy rates, and then they tell you what your operating subsidy is going to be for the coming year. The caveat to that is that let's, just in a ballpark figure, let's say that they said you were eligible for $100,000. And in prior years, the proration factor has been in excess of 100%. So they said you're eligible for 100, you might be 105. However, the going consensus right now is that in this coming year, the proration factor will not be that. We'll be doing good. Again, I've heard anywhere from as low as 89% to 90%. So I used 89% in my calculations. So even though HUD says you're eligible for 100,000, you're going to get 89. So we're not going to get, regardless of what the stuff they said it could be, it's not going to be that. So numbers are going to be down a little bit from that. The other thing that I looked at is you look at your possible rents versus your vacancy rates and uncollectibles, and that reduces it some as well. And in the past years, our vacancies have been higher than they should be. I'm projecting them right now in the spreadsheet at 90% occupancy. It honestly should be higher than that, but it's been lower than that. So 90% is probably a good starting point for what we might be able to be getting. The other thing is that I projected is that a number of the units that are currently offline will be being brought back online, which will increase the potential rental revenues as well.
Do you have a sense of like, so in the past, vacancy rate has been lower than 90%, just as a point comparison?
You want it, they like you to have it up at 95% occupancy. It's been lower. That's why our past score was low because, well, not just Home Towers, Gill has a significant number of vacancies as well. And so that needs to be turned around, and we're working on that. But yes, Hall Towers too, even though you've got units offline, you still get your subsidy, but you're not getting your rental income that you would have gotten, and that could amount to as much as $65,000 just for Hall Towers.
Right. So board members, feel free to stop and ask questions at any point. So we know where the money comes from generally, we know where it's going generally speaking. Another big picture question is how did we get to where we're at with the budget that's in front of us today? How did we get to this place?
Our vacancies are too high, is part of the problem. And there's been spending that we're in the process of curtailing. We were outsourcing, the last couple of years, we were outsourcing all of the lawn, the grounds upkeep. And we were, for a while, outsourcing unit turnover. When the unit was vacant, we were having an outside company come in and paint them, outside company come in and clean them and do things like that. Even though we had a full complement of maintenance staff. We're one short right now to have the full complement of maintenance. We're looking to hire one person to come in at the M1 level who will be primarily dedicated to doing the grounds and maintenance as well as helping with the unit cleaning paint. So that, in that instance, other than the fact that the maintenance wages are going up a little, we'll have the same amount of maintenance people we had last year, but we will not be outsourcing. And I've mentioned in prior meetings, the numbers we were spending and did through this year still on grounds upkeep and everything was substantial.
Yeah. So in terms of the big picture differences between last year's budget and this year's budget, that would be one of them?
That would be one of them.
Are there any other major differences?
Not necessarily the budget, but between what was actually done, yes. There were other expenses, there were a number of other expenses that weren't on the budget as approved last year that, we're going to be working and keeping the costs further under control. Some of the other project, everyone out there, any company that sees HUD pockets being really deep comes to you with a project they think that would be wonderful for you to do. And in the majority of cases, unless something we already were pondering, we're turning them down. we don't have to do everything and we can't do everything. And we've been doing that, we've been scaling those back over the last several months.
So one of the reasons that, we're running a deficit is that the vacancies have been high.
Correct.
That a goal for us as a board is to make sure we get those vacancies.
The vacancies, and HUD wants that too, they want our task score to come back up, and they want us to have things in specifically, action plans specifically to address that, to reduce the vacancies and bring those scores back up, so that it's not just us that want that, it's being asked by the higher ups in HUD.
When you say they want an action plan,
They do, it got a little delayed because of the shutdown. I just heard back from Leah Sod in the beginning of this week, and they're gonna be reaching out in the future, in the near future, for us to go over some of that.
Okay.
But it's a lot of it's gonna be doing is getting these units put back online and increasing our lease ups.
so I don't wanna jump the gun, because we have a whole budget to work through, but anything specifically in the budget that you could point to, which would help us get these vacancies filled, get the units back online, get things turned over more quickly?
We're doing everything. Jill's processing applications at a good rate. As was mentioned at last week's board meeting, the maintenance staff is doing a fantastic job getting these units turned around. They turned 6 around, in what was a busy month as it was, so they're going the right direction with it. And they understand that that's our focus right now. We need to get as many back online as quickly as possible, at least the month.
Well, and that's been an on-standing issue. I mean, when we were trying to get people out of units in this building that had to be turned over, and so that they could be moved into to do the construction, we were under that same gun, which is why we went to, and the board chose to go to landscapers and others. That was for a temporary period to fix, because our maintenance men can't be at both places.
Well, maintenance men had been redirected for a little bit too. They're getting, because of the, where we're at now, they're starting to get a rhythm back for turning these units over where they weren't, that wasn't what they were working on before.
Well, no, that's good, but again, I'm just saying, it depends on the number of units. As you say, it takes a number of days sometimes to turn
Well,
these
yeah,
around.
but some of these
which is
units are in
unfortunate.
much worse, in a worse state of repair than others, so
Right.
it's not just washing and painting. There's patching and replacing and making sure, and some of these units are really in need.
So maybe if we turn to the overall operating budget then, where these figures are there in lump sums. In terms of the vacancy issue in particular, so the money that we're expecting from rental revenue, is that at the current? I mean, how do you calculate the vacancy rate relative to the rental revenue that we're expecting?
Okay, well, and a couple things.
And if you prefer to just walk us through it in your own fashion, that would be fine.
That's good. If you go in your package, go to where it says low rent operating budget, there's one for each AM. So go to the one for the first AM, because that'll be a good template. You tell how many units you have, so in AM4 we have 115 units.
Do you have any more papers? My computer's not letting me open. Yeah. Otherwise, I could just look on with,
I guess I don't have, I guess let's have one go on.
it's all right. Sorry, go ahead now.
So if you look at it, there's 115 ACC units, that's how many units we have in the M1. And so then you look at unit months available, which is 150 times 12. And then your estimated occupancy rate. And then from that, if you dig deeper down, in the page behind that, there's anything that's in yellow for the numbers in the spreadsheet where I am data. So you look at what your average rent per tenant is that you're taking in. And that number times, is what's calculating out what your estimated rent revenue is.
And so your calculations are based on the 90% rate
Correct.
vacancy, or occupancy.
Right. So like, that's why if you look at the front page, it took what I said was your average rent times your number of units, but then they took 10% off that. For your vacancy loss rent to give you your net expected revenue. And what I did, just to make sure these figures were kind of in the right ballpark, is I looked at what our rental numbers were for fiscal year ended 2025, and I projected what they are gonna be here for 2026 by doing, we're 9 months into the year. So I looked at 9 months revenue, not 9 months rent, divided by 9 times 12, to come up with the figure, and it's in the same ballpark as what this is coming up with the exception of Holland Towers. And that's because I expect to have much more rentals coming in Holland Towers.
How do they compare to, last year? I was doing some talking back and forth between the budget that was in front of us last year at this time and the budget that's here now.
Okay,
Do you have
so
a sense of how they compare?
I do. So I looked at the amount from, but again, this is not the audited numbers, these are the numbers out of Horizon, they read slightly different from the audited. But for AMP1, for instance, for fiscal year ended 2025, we had in AMP1, 427,787
For the rental revenue.
rental revenue. And what we're projecting for the year we're in right now, dividing it by 9 and multiplying it by 12, in 2026, it projected to be 397,650. And that's, and what the budget figured out came out to be about the same, came out to be 392,950.
And what explains the difference?
Well, in some of that's the vacancies, and some of that's the, yeah. Some of that's the vacancies we've had in the last year. Which, if you look at two, which is Holland Towers. In that instance, the average rent is $344. And again, if you assume a 90% occupancy rate of the whole building, then the amount based on that, what we had for 2025 for AMP2 was 341,000. What we're projecting for 2026, because we've had most of the building empty, is only 272,000. And what I'm projecting with pulling it back up would put us at 436,160, which is 164,000 more going forward than what we're looking at, where we're at right now.
So do you both have copies or just? 'Cause
Very
I-
nice, sharing one.
Oh, okay. All right, that's all right. I'm frustrated with my computer.
I apologize, I made another.
No, that's
copy
all
of
right.
that.
I usually use the. So it differs based on the amp. So it's different
It
for
does.
Elm, it's different for.
Right, because there's a different number of units, it's 115 units in AMP1. AMP1 is Elm, Morgan, Star Sites is 115 units. Holland Towers is 132 units.
Right.
And then Gilder's 100. So it differs based on that, but then the average rent is still, you look at the rent roll and divide it out to come up with your average rent per month per amp.
Any questions at this point? So we're still kind of looking at.
Well, the numbers are kind of close again, because we're probably coming in, our vacancy rate, I think, on the fast score was at like 89%. It was, so having it at 90 on here still isn't really good. Yet there's a lot of room to bring that up, that's why these numbers are close.
And you're putting it at 90, why 90? Why not 95? for instance?
We can do that, it's a spreadsheet, it's a flexible thing.
No, I'm just, based on, why are you asking me?
Because it's where we're, it's closer to where we're at right now, and we can build from there. I don't wanna bring something in pie in the sky, and why didn't we hit this? This is where we're at right now. The only thing that I'm doing different in this versus where we're at right now is I'm filling this building.
You know, I would prefer you don't overestimate your budget.
Yeah, and that's,
They'll
So
come after you
90%
for,
90% is still low, it's still lower than what HUD wants, but it's slightly higher than where we're at.
and if you come out looking better,
Right,
that helps your score.
But if I say, if I come up with something and say we're gonna have $500 million in profit, and we don't, then why? I'd rather be on the other side of that.
What are the biggest obstacles to hitting our target? Well, not going above our target vacancy rate. Other than just, I mean, we have a number of units right now that are completely offline, some that are online but still vacant, and it requires basic maintenance to get them turned over. I'm just trying to get a sense of like what keeps us from hitting a higher vacancy rate.
Well, the fact that we hit, first off, the fact that they turned 6 over last month, it's a great thing, they're hitting a rhythm, but now they need to do that every month. And so getting to where that becomes like a machine, that's gonna help a lot. And in reducing expenses, we spent significant amount of money on the groundskeeping in particular, and that's not going to be happening anymore, so that's a huge reduction in expense.
And the better we can fill our waiting list.
Yes,
Again, and I know we're working on that, but the more we have, a unit comes available today and I can put someone in it tomorrow, as opposed to waiting till someone gets the data in, will make a big difference too.
and that's where both even the work that Jill and Rich are doing in the Section 8 program, and the work that Jill's doing on the applicant list, they're all streamlining that and doing much better than what they were. So it's all steps in the right direction. But as I mentioned before, the year that we're in, the fiscal year that ends in March, and we're 3/4 of the way through it, and I'm not gonna promise you guys anything in that. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't even find until fairly recently, so the ramifications of that is absolutely gonna be on the bottom line in March. But then hopefully going forward, it's gonna be a different picture.
Which, again, still big picture here, looking back at the previous budget, and I had emailed you about this, do we have an emergency fund?
So here's the thing with that, there's a couple of things. First off, that's what our investments are. And if you look at the audits, I sent you the last 4 or 5 years worth. There's a thing called the MENAR score, and that's where they look at how many months the housing authority would be able to be self-sufficient in the absence of subsidy. And our number, it used to be between 10 and 11 months, right now it's 7.33 months. And honestly, with the additional money that's been drawn down with investments this year, it's gonna be lower than that, it's probably gonna be closer to 6 months. Having said that, HUD still doesn't consider that an emergency. If you drop below 3 months of reserves, you become eligible to apply to HUD for emergency funding. So we're not in, by any means, we're not in panic zone, and there are some other safety nets. But that's where we're at in terms of reserves right now.
So do we have a figure for like an operating reserve? Because again, in the previous budget, let's see, for instance, on the Antoine, it was reserve investment of $251,000 for
Well, I
Antoine.
can tell you what our investments are, I can't break them down for you by AMP rate at this point.
But that's what that referred to in the previous budget, was just what the investments
That's
were.
primarily what that is.
Portion of that,
It's what the actual value of what we have is. At the start of this fiscal year, we were at, at the end of fiscal year 2025, March 31st, we had $2,056,000 in investments. And right now, we're closer to $1.6 million, $1,690,000.
You say that again, sorry.
It's ignoring any interest that we've accumulated over the last 9 months, it's $1,693,481.
So do we wanna, I'm just gonna continue to talk unless other people have questions or comments. John, if it's possible, can we just kind of walk through each of these documents that you gave us, starting with the overall?
Yep.
Going back to the beginning?
Yep, all the supporting documents are what build that overall.
Overall.
And if you look, everything that's on the overall didn't get plugged directly into that, it came from these. Each of these that has the supporting document, you see all the columns, and all the gold is the ones that we input numbers for, and then it calculates it and creates the other. So if there's anything in particular where you wonder where the numbers came from, that's
We'll show there.
easier to do than, in some instances, in most instances, the numbers I took from these is I went and I looked at our income statement for the last fiscal year and plugged those figures or boosted them a little if they seemed reasonable, with the exception of I took out all the groundskeeping. I took out some of the, I mentioned before how the uniforms had gotten unusually high. It was, I think, $26,000 in January. And uniforms, we don't budget anywhere near that, and didn't budget anywhere near that in the past. So I tried to make it realistic with where we actually have them at this point. And yeah, it's like $1,000. It's $10 a month. No, that's garbage. It's $994 for a year for AMP1 for uniforms. So you've got about 1,000 there, but that's for a year. And then for AMP2, the allocation of the uniform cost is can't find it. $1,150 for AMP2. So it ended up being about 3,000 total for the year
For uniforms.
for uniforms. Yeah.
And then, could we be more concrete about what are uniforms?
What are uniforms?
Yeah, who's wearing the uniform?
Maintenance wears them. And we get them from Cintas, and it's by contract. And they supply them with shirts, pants, and our guys launder their own. But then if they rip them, tear them, outgrow them, whatever, Cintas replaces them in a charge, and they replace them periodically.
All right, well, going through the overall budget, I have a couple questions about some of these other categories. I think I'm understanding it, but I'm pretty stupid on this stuff, so I'm gonna put it out there and you can correct me if I'm wrong. So under the operating expenditures, we already know that the payroll is our biggest expense.
Mhm.
There's also management fees and booking fees. My understanding of
We're paying
management,
those ourselves.
yes, that's what I thought.
If you go back and look at the central office,
Mhm.
you'll see they come out of that. So it's an accounting entry. We're not paying anything, it's strictly a matter of allocating, doing expenses, right? And those numbers are been pretty much the same on the budgets for the last several years, and I wrote, made them past Roman, and he said, that's correct, he told me how that's figured.
And then the other big expense here is the office expense, which I assume is office supplies and such, which falls under the category of office expense, with total of $109,000.
Let me see, which one are you on?
I'm on the overall,
What are you on the overall?
under operating expenditures for the admin section. Under advertising.
Okay, office expense is, it is office supplies, but it's also your postage meter, your landlines, your cell phones, your copying machines, the internet, bank fees, and internet security. And we have, and with the internet security, we have a couple leases with Hagen that they're fixed amounts every month, but those are your bigger figures.
Looking at that first set of expenditures, then we'll get to utilities here in a second. Do you have any thoughts about where we could trim expenses? This seems like a pretty
Yeah,
bare
actually, I
bones
do.
budget, do you?
Actually, I do. Right now, we have, and I have to look to see what our contracts are.
Mhm.
We have two very large copiers, one in my office, one in the office shared by Rich and Vanessa and Barb. And honestly, we could probably make do with one of those. But I need to see where we're at on the lease, whether that's doable yet. But they're expensive leases. And the other thing, the internet security is expensive, but the counterpart to that is if things get hijacked or whatever, then it's a different thing, so then you have to have it.
I have a question, why are we leasing equipment versus,
They maintain
okay, I was just
it.
curious.
The copiers are prone, all the moving parts and electronics, they're prone to breaking down. And when you lease them, they come in, they take care of them, and if the machine wears out, breaks, or becomes obsolete, they replace it at no charge. It's included in the lease. The cost of buying, if you've seen how big the copier now is, the cost of buying those wouldn't save you anything.
What about the computer equipment,
The
like
computer-
laptops and such?
The computer equipment, we had bought all that, a lot of it was old. We actually repurposed a lot of what was originally in the learning center computer lab for the towns. We've just signed a new lease, which you guys had approved, meeting or two ago, 4 computers, but it's $490 a month. And they're actually in the process of replacing what we have with those.
Now, are those things that we're buying or things that we're leasing?
No, there'll be leases. The problem again, same with computers as with the copiers, is first off, computers are only good, really functionally good for about 3 or 4 years, 5 years tops. Computers we had when I started here 12 years ago, which while it seems a long time ago, they were actually still running DOS-based software, which is from the early 90s. And
Wow.
it was so bad that our antivirus software was seeing our billing software as a virus, because it was a DOS-based program. So anyway, having the newer computers, it prevents those things from happening, makes it easier to maintain, easier to upgrade, and they maintain.
Any other areas that you can reducing?
There is one other actually. The cell phones, we're paying $1,000 a month right now on cell phones. And Kyle's getting me, he's confirming for it, but he thinks that only 1 or 2 of the maintenance guys are actually using them. They prefer to use their own. And similarly in the office, not everyone's using those. So we could scale those back substantially, I believe. And that contract, I believe, is past the point of being able to reconfigure. The copier lease by copy, I don't know.
The cell phone contract is a yearly contract, I assume, so.
I'm not sure. It's through, it's through AT&T, but it's for, first responders. They give you a better deal for it, but I'm fairly certain that contract is able to be changed right now.
Oh,
Because I know several companies wanting to bid on
Is there any reason that they should need cell phones other than their own? Because it's not like
Well, not everybody,
nobody calls them but you.
not everybody
Each
has a
other.
cell
Oh,
phone. That's just a fact of some of the employees and everything, so some of them have to have them.
Travel's a pretty small expense, I assume that's just mileage reimbursement?
Mileage.
And that's for, say, maintenance, running their own cars, or?
Well, it's for actually not maintenance, as a general rule, doesn't turn in mileage, it's mostly administrative. If Jill or Shar, for instance, have to run back and forth from here to the learning center or up to the VFW, you wouldn't think that that's much, but you do it 3-4 times in a week, and you spend $100 in gas. So that's what that is. That's HUD sets the federal government sets what the mileage reimbursement rate is. They're not making money on it. It's only 70 cents a mile.
Well, it would be for any required trainings, right?
And yes, and if you had any distance training, you might have HUD in Pittsburgh, or we've had training at State College or whatever, it reimburses that as well. But the bulk of what that is, other than Rich, the bulk of what that is administrative stuff going back and forth between the properties. Now Rich, because he's going out to Section 8 inspections, and he's going out countywide, his is a little big, but that's what that is.
All right, I'm moving down here on the overall budget form. Under operating expenditures, now moving on to utilities.
Think about utilities,
Yeah.
and we don't have a whole lot of control over them, if any, but that's not necessarily a horrible thing either, because our operating subsidy is based on the utility usage. So even though utilities go up, that affects how much operating subsidy we ultimately end up being eligible for. So there's not a whole lot. You're not gonna get a whole lot of benefit by trying to reduce those, because they'll reduce your subsidy as well.
I have a question. Why is electricity on there? Is that,
What do you mean, why is it on?
well, because tenants in the projects pay their.
We pay electricity on everything else. We pay it on the lights at Gill, there's 15 separate bills that come from the lights outside of Gill.
Oh, the security lights and stuff.
Oh.
Oh, I was just asking.
Yeah.
I was curious.
There's 15 lights there, plus we have the electricity in the learning center and in the 2 garages, the electricity right here, and we pay the electric for everything, all the towers, and then at the VFW as well. And then any units that are vacant, then those bills get turned into our name as well. The electric bills aren't the biggest one. The biggest one by far is water. And there's nothing you can do about that other than pay the bill.
I was just curious. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So that explains why the electric bill is so much higher on all the towers.
Because of the construction going on. In fact, we're paying for everybody, but it's even higher right now due to construction.
As far as the gas goes, can we, I don't know how this program works with the housing authority, like can LIHEAP, but I know that was put on hold for a while, but is there any way we can weatherize the apartments? Cause I know, I mean, you can vouch for me, all winter long, there's a constant stream of air coming through the door, there's all the windows
It's
are.
absolutely something that could be put on the radar for going down the road, but there is no capital fund money right now for projects of that magnitude as well.
Could residents get help through LIHEAP, or are they not eligible because of the help? Like, I never understood why, if you live in housing, you can't get help from LIHEAP. I don't understand how that.
I don't know why you can't either, Jim.
You can get gas subsidy from LIHEAP based on your income.
But I meant like the weatherization.
Weatherization's a different program, but yes, you're right, I'm not sure the county weatherization would apply. you could ask them, but I doubt it.
Well, come to say, because that might help cut the gas bill way down, if that, and that would help save money somewhere.
But again, the gas bill in either instance is offset by the fact that it's what our subsidy is based on. Not saying that we don't want to be as efficient as possible with things, but you're not necessarily gonna get the housing authorities aren't gonna get a whole lot of benefit by trying to reduce their utility bill.
The tenant will, but the authority will.
Our subsidy, the amount of money that HUD gives us, is calculated based on our utility bills. So if our utility bills get lower, we get less subsidy.
Oh, okay. That is very odd. I mean, I understand it, but at the same time, it's like, wouldn't you want it to be more efficient?
You still
Like,
be as
shouldn't they
efficient
just
as
give-
possible, but at the same time,
Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, in a rational world, HUD would incentivize you to become more efficient.
and
that's
they
why,
want you to
because
be,
that's why I'm like,
they
why
want you to
would
be, but
that
at the
work
same
that way?
token,
With utilities.
yeah.
What are other utilities? Just curious. Another small figure relatively, but I just didn't know.
It's stormwater management.
So we're spending 10,000 on the elevator. I know that's a perennial problem. I don't even know if I want to go down there.
There's a monthly maintenance contract to have an elevator at all.
Yeah.
And that's, as a general, that's in the neighborhood of $500-600 a month, so that gives you $6,000-7,000 right there. And then whenever you have a repair that's, so yeah, that's, and the elevator is actually not in as bad a shape as it seemed.
I haven't heard much about many
We changed
complaints.
companies, but
I
that's
was
the
gonna
same
say,
company.
since we changed companies, hasn't it been
It's
much
been much
more?
better, yes.
They came in and cleaned it, that seems to have been one of the issues, and,
As a general rule, as an overall, the elevator's not in that bad a shape.
and particularly with the maintenance you have going on now.
Yeah.
And the heavy use of it, I've been really surprised that it's done.
But we
as
have a
well
much
as
better
it has.
company maintaining it now, and have had for about a year.
Moving on down the overall budget onto page 2 under unit turnaround. I mean, there's nothing at the top of page 2 at all. And the only reason I spotlighted unit turnaround is I thought maybe we'd want to put some money towards that for the sake of training.
Well,
those vacancies.
Well, you could, but the reason, what I did is I hit all the numbers where pretty much our numbers are going. Unit turnaround, if we're the ones doing the cleaning and the painting, then you don't put expense there because it's already reflected in the payroll.
So that would only be if we contracted out.
Correct.
I figure it.
And we're not doing third party with that right now, so that's why that's left blank.
Got it. Any way to cut our insurance costs?
I don't know. There's only a couple companies that specialize in public housing. The company we have with most everything through HAI Group, or HARG's Housing Authority Risk Retention Group. They've done well for us in that's.
How does that work? Do we put out a call for insurance, or do we actively seek out an insurance provider?
I don't know, we've been with them the entire time I've been here.
Do you think it'd be worth it reaching out to some other companies that provide for housing authorities?
I
Say,
can
"Look,
look
we're
into it.
looking."
I can look into it. It is a big expense, it's typically about $250,000 every year. And that is, there's that, and then there's also the flood insurance, and we're required to have that, you can only get that one place.
My last question on the overall budget page was under non-routine maintenance. Just if you could explain what that is.
That would be, let's say for instance, when we were talking about replacing the gas meter thing up at Ellen Morgan, that would have been $50,000. And if you didn't do that through capital fund money, if you were gonna do that, if we were just gonna spend that out of operating fund, you'd have put it there. Because it would not have been a routine, it would be extraordinary maintenance if something happened and you had to do it, it'd be non-routine maintenance if you didn't have to, but you chose to do it.
So essentially, any improvements not covered by the capital.
I mean, it's any big expenses that aren't on a recurring basis that you're paying for out of operating fund.
And so for that category, for each, so they're in a deficit. They're under parentheses, meaning they are,
Well, that's your net operating profit or loss, is what that's calculating on there.
so you're estimating a loss under nine?
Yeah, that's what's totaling up to ultimately to your $150,000.
Yeah, it's a big chunk of it.
Yeah. Well, it's not big, I mean, that's not a single category, that's the subtotal in the spreadsheet.
No, above that where it says 34,430. That's just from non-routine maintenance.
4,000.
So I see the big figure, I see the 150, but right
Yeah.
above that is 34,430.
Hang on a second, I don't see where you're at.
It's the total for the.
Are you looking at the pilot?
No,
Oh, I see, the non-routine maintenance.
I'm below the pilot,
I
yeah.
see.
Under other non-operating items,
All
non-routine.
right, let me see what okay, so those bring up 1 and AM 2. So if we go into oh, it's bad debt expense, is what that is. And then the 18,430. Now, let me check something here. So the bad debt expense is coming up as the 16,000, but that's not what the 18,430 is. Was it?
Yeah, you've got on your amp for Holland Towers, under extraordinary maintenance, you've got 18,430, whereas bad debt, you've got 19,500.
I don't have anything for AM3 on those. I'm gonna have to check on those. Because I don't have a bad debt expense for AM3 and there should be. I'm thinking that was probably the bad debt expense on both. Second here. okay. All three of those should have been extraordinary maintenance, and I pulled them off the of last year's, income statement.
Okay.
That should not have said bad debt expense on one. It's 16,000 for, was what the extraordinary maintenance figure was, I just used last year's,
Okay,
and then it's 18,430 for AM2, and it was only $1,500 for AM3. Those were the extraordinary maintenance figures from the prior year, so I just carried it forward. That one that said bad debt shouldn't be there, I'll need to add the one in for. I'll fix that.
So, I'll wait till you finish.
So it should have, you know, 1,500 in for, three.
So
That's
that- So that would increase this deficit over here.
by $1,500, yes. I'll fix that, that's just a.
And then bad debt expenses are just rents that we weren't able to collect.
We already have collection losses up in there, so that there's no need to be on the separate unit for that.
So what are the bad debt expenses?
Well, we've already figured that in the collection losses.
Oh,
So, the thing with this, rather than plug a number for every single line, I looked at the budgets that it's been prior years and what categories were comprised of those. And that's kind of how because here, ultimately, this thing has to turn into something that I can submit to HUD. And now this is HUD's template I'm using, but I haven't seen how I actually put it into HUD. A lot of times what they'll have something, it'll be called, what's called clonable. You'll bring a priority in and just go and change the numbers to what you want. So I tried to use numbers on here that we've used on the other one, so that when I go to it, I can just, for ease of submittal. And the whole thing with this, like you said, these are goals. This should be a very fluid thing. We should revisit this every month or two to make sure where we're at and if we need to tweak it in any direction. The other place where you'll save money, right now, in the payroll, I've got figures in there for an executive director and a deputy executive. And depending on which direction the board goes, the one position could disappear or be substantially reduced. So there's a significant one there as well. And then, as we've talked about before, Joe, bringing in a resident district coordinator, if we do it and are able to get one of those Roth grants for that, that's, I don't want to say it's free, but it won't affect the budget.
Yeah, right.
So it's where we can do that without.
I like the idea too of kind of keeping this budget as a touchstone that we come back to. each
That's
month
really the
just to
purpose
see-
of the budget,
Yeah.
it should be used that way. So that we don't get to the end of the year and what the hell happened.
Right.
In either direction.
Yeah, I agree. I like that idea. All right, that's all I have for the overall form.
I'll fix those numbers on the other two things, I just miskeyed the one and I forgot to enter the one on the other. You look at the stuff long enough, I spent most of my weekend going through this. Particularly being the first time doing it, you look, trying to figure out what numbers go where and where it's feeding to. It's not just kind of calculating, it's trying to figure out how it even ultimately feeds to this form. And it was very productive weekend, but it was a really long weekend.
So I think we could take payroll and the benefits documents together. I don't have any questions on that. I don't know if anybody else does. My only questions about those two, let me pull them up really quickly. One of them I can't pull up. I'll go with the the payroll document. So that one says operating budget, I think this is it. Yeah, so this is the payroll document.
It'll say operating budget, schedule of all positions and salaries.
My only question on that one is assistant maintenance inspector.
That's Kyle.
Oh, that's Kyle, okay.
What I've done so far, this will, when Ron retired, because Ron was the maintenance superintendent, and Kyle was the assistant maintenance inspector. And I bumped Kyle's, because Kyle took over essentially Ron's duties, I bumped his wages half the distance between his and Ron's, which was like $3 an hour. I chose to do that as opposed to slot him into Ron's position for a couple reasons. Number one, I wasn't sure he was fully at the task. He's doing really well. The other reason, so I wanted to leave that other option if I needed. The other reason is because he had indicated at one point that he was looking forward to, he wanted to get Ron's position. Because Ron's was more salaried, and right now, I allow him to work overtime, which if he goes to Ron's position, he won't be salaried. So the hours won't be, the incentive to work overtime won't be there, but the extra pay won't be there. He actually would take a pay cut to, if he went to Ron's position without being allowed to be compensated for any overtime.
And so is that position also, I mean, is Kyle filling the maintenance 3 position too? Then?
No, Kyle's not a maintenance 3 at all.
Okay.
He hasn't been, ever since he was put in the assistant maintenance superintendent, he's been administrative.
Okay.
But we wouldn't have that position and the superintendent position. So ultimately,
one or the other.
it'll be one or the other. And boosting his pay in the way that I did, and I'm doing it by Chris, I got his input as well, allows him to still make the same or maybe a little more than would make it in the other, but there will be either that or the other. There will not be both.
Let me circle back really quick. I thought I heard you, I'm sorry, because it's like looking at the numbers, listening to you. In terms of, you mentioned earlier about the EB and the deputy position, and that say if the board decided to like get rid of the deputy position, just have an EB. Is that even feasible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, right now I'm doing all of it. So, yes. And, what might be done going forward would be consider bringing in an accountant or even an accounting clerk, potentially. Somebody, you'd asked me to do up a listing of the job duties of what I used to do, what I'm currently doing, and the whole thing. And the payroll aspect of it, doing the payroll, the hiring, all the withholdings, the payments, the various audits, there's one for pension, there's one for laborers, there's, as well as interfacing with the fee accountant and the auditors, is all stuff that could, and paying all the bills, which I do, and submitting some of the Section 8 reports, the MS reports, all of that could be done by the accountant. I did all those things when I was just the accountant.
So we effectively replaced the deputy ED with an accountant position, and that would save us some on the expenses?
Yeah.
Good to know. And ultimately, I mean, that's, if I'm correct, that's not the board's call. That could be like something we would encourage the executive director to do, but it's ultimately would be their call.
I believe so. When I started, I was the accountant for 5 years, and Bill created the position, Director of Housing Management. He was, and so at the time he was looking at, I can't think of the word I want, not longevity, but
Transition.
thank you. he was thinking long-term for the transition. And so he created the Director of Housing Management. He had considered creating a deputy position at the time, but I, for one, wasn't eligible at the time to be the deputy, because to be the deputy had to have minimum 2 years supervisory in public housing, and I did not have that. Director of Housing Management didn't require that. So I was the Director of Housing Management for 4.5 years. After that, then I was eligible to be the deputy, which I've been for a couple of years now. But no, it would not be necessary to have a.
All right, any questions about anything we've discussed so far? I saw Marcia looking at the clock. I am mindful of the time. Marcia, I know you have to leave at 4. I also know we're planning to hold an executive session. So what I think I would propose at this point, I don't know that we're gonna need to go like line by line on the AMPS and the housing choice voucher budget, but I do want us to have time to go over that. I'm also thinking that, we've got the current budget in front of us, which results in $150,000 deficit. I would like to ask you to maybe go back and just kind of have some fun with it, be creative to figure out a way that we might reduce that deficit, if not eliminate it.
Well, one way, just an example in that line of thinking, what we were just talking about. If we were to eliminate the deputy position, assuming that you found someone to be the executive director, if we eliminated the deputy position and didn't hire an accountant for 6 months, 8 months, whatever, and I'm already doing all that anyway, that would be that much more. Well,
You're single-handedly gonna get us out of this.
well, I'm doing it anyway. I don't, so you're looking at savings. and-
Mike Crawley, if you're watching.
Yeah, right.
All right, well, that's good. So I guess, again, if the board is okay with it, I would like to have another meeting before our next regular meeting, just on the budget, where you can come back to us with like, hey, I played with some figures, here's how we could reduce the deficit and not get rid of it entirely based on what we talked about today.
My other question was, are there alternate grants or income streams that the housing authority could apply for to offset some of these?
Right now, I'm gonna tell you no. And, here's the reason why. I've applied for a number of grants for the housing authority over the years. We successfully got the one that replaced all the gas ranges with electric ranges, a $3 million grant. However, that grant was I don't want to say merit-based, but it was a need-based grant. And still, there were only a few of those that were actually awarded no matter what people's need was. Most of the grants are lottery. First off, you have to find one that you're eligible to apply for, and then it's a lottery. And we've never won a lottery for grant. And that's in years where money was more flush. Right now, the odds of getting grant money, I'm gonna say, are next to 0, because they're looking at reducing funding as it is to public housing. So going and looking for additional free money right now is, I still always remain cognizant that I look to see if there are grants that we're eligible for that we could apply for, but I wouldn't bet bank on it right now, probably.
Okay, so is the rest of the board okay with this plan?
Yep.
And I think what we would be looking at then, so I know we got the holiday coming up next week. I don't necessarily want to put you to work during the holiday.
Tweaking this will actually not be
You won't be that much?
anywhere near the amount of work it was setting up to begin with. I can go in, I can raise, for instance, I can raise the occupancy rate from 90 to 92 and see how it affects the numbers. I can eliminate positions, how that affects the numbers. There's a lot of little things we could do that wouldn't take all this time.
Is it possible then, I'm just thinking, looking at the calendar, so next week is the 22nd through the 26th, the following week is the 29th through the 2nd. John, how much time do you need? Would it be possible, for example, to meet on the 29th or the 30th for you?
We could do that.
I know I've got to coordinate with the other board members and their calendars. Are people planning to travel for the holiday? You'll be gone all of the next 2 weeks,
I'll be gone, part of this, end of this week, or
end of the next week?
end of the next week and to the new year.
And it's too quick perhaps to ask for a turnaround by early next week before Christmas Eve day.
Maybe. I can change, for those couple numbers, I can change that fairly easily. Fully, I'm absolutely not available on the 23rd.
And again, you guys can,
You don't mind? So maybe we could tentatively plan for something on the 29th through the 30th, as long as we have a quorum. That way we could, if we're in a position to pass the budget, if that's okay with you.
I'm fine with that. Tell me what you need, I'll take care of it.
Okay, I don't know how your calendars look for December 29th.
I'm open those 2 days. You know, the 29th, 30th.
No, because he doesn't do the schedules until Thursdays for the next week.
So why don't we then tentatively plan on a meeting, say, December 30th,
Okay.
Tuesday, 2 o'clock? So we can do it earlier too.
We could do it
No,
earlier, yeah.
no, 2 o'clock's good. As long as I get out of here in time, if I have to work to get
Do we
over
pick
the
the
bridge.
29th or the 30th, or we're just
Let's
tentative?
go with the
30th at 2.
Let's go with the 30th.
At 2,
That way you'd have a full working day ahead of time if you needed to get.
that's fine, I'll take care of it.
Okay. So, I think then in terms of where that leaves us today, you have your marching orders. We have maybe a couple more things to cover in terms of like, again, the vouchers. And we haven't gone over each amp, but I don't know that we need to in detail. All right, so as far as this meeting goes then, we can just pause then our discussion of the budget. We need to have another executive session to discuss personnel matters, so this is where Chris would be good. I don't recall us having to make a motion to go into executive session, we simply have to make a motion to adjourn once we're all done.
once you come back out of executive session, you make a motion to adjourn, because again, you may or may not be taking that business.
All right, guys, put my phones.
And one thing, just for, since I may not be here for section 8, just be very cognizant, the little I hear is that you certainly won't be seeing any bailouts.
I've heard
So
that
we
as well.
certainly do not want to exceed our authorization, and we don't get those numbers right on time. So I do, that's.
And our
certainly-
investments, I don't know, for the most part, off the top of my head, I don't know how much we have in our investments. I do know how much money we have in the section 8 account, and we have enough money in there to cover, I believe we have enough to cover 1 to 2 months without subsidy. But last year when we got, when we were over lease, we had to beg, borrow, and in order to get extra money from, or at least HUD, we wouldn't wanna get into
And
that.
I would not assume you could do that again,
No.
because I'm hearing that, we were lucky and our number was small.
Right.
But, so we need to be very careful about that.
All right. So then, I think we're gonna move into executive session